Hola y bienvenidos. I am Nathian Rodriguez, and today I want to speak to you about diversity. Diversity is a term, it's a word that is thrown around all over the place. You hear it in the media, you hear it in our universities, but rarely do we stop and take a minute to just unpack what diversity means. If I show you a picture like this, and I say the word diversity and you look at it, you usually think of those identities that are superficial, things that people can see, right? So we see color, we see gender. But diversity is so much more than this. Yes, it's gender, it's ethnicity and race, but it also includes sexual orientation, it includes ability and disability, political ideology, religion, geography, and much, much more. Most of the time when we think about diversity, we only focus on one or two of these identities, and we really don't get into all the identities that come together to shape an individual person. So we need more than diversity. We need intersectionality. Intersectionality is a term that was conceptualized by Kimberly Crenshaw in the early 1990s. And what she did is she looked at all the identities that people have and how they intersect and come together to make the overall identity of a person. She looked at groups of individuals and how these groups are sometimes looked at as being monolithic or homogeneous. They're all the same. So let's say we have a group of women. We see the group of women and we think that they're all the same, but each one has different race, different ethnicity, maybe even they're trans women, different religions, different sports teams, and so forth. So what intersectionality does is it puts the individual back into this group mentality. So what we need is intersectional diverse representation. Kimberly Crenshaw goes further with intersectionality, and she breaks it down to three different types of intersectionality: structural, political, and representational. And representational is what we're going to focus on today. Representational intersectionality directly speaks to the cultural construction of intersections, or how those intersections are represented in cultural imagery, such as the media. That's the main focus today. But first, I do want to say that intersectionality is inherently tied to identity. And identity continues to be a site of resistance and disruption and negotiation for marginalized communities all around the world. Now let's turn to the media. There is not a lot of diversity in the media, even less intersectional diversity. If we do see marginalized characters, they are usually in the fringes, they're not very well represented. There's not representations of people of color, of people with disabilities, LGBTQ. It's just very rare and far in between. UCLA just released a study a couple of weeks ago, and it's called the Hollywood Diversity Report. And in this diversity report, they analyzed over 1,200 television shows. And what they found was 28% of leads for new shows were female, which is a decrease from last season. That same number, 28%, is also the amount of marginalized leads that were in these television shows as well. While this is a small increase from last season, it is still disproportionately less than representations of white and Caucasian individuals. This problem, though, is not endemic to television. We also see this happening in film as well. The same Hollywood Diversity Report found that leads that were female was only 31%. Leads that were minority characters were 13.9%. That's 13.9. So as you can see, this is very problematic for many reasons, but I'm going to highlight two reasons. The first is that diversity, as I mentioned earlier, is not just gender, race, and ethnicity. So this Hollywood Diversity Report doesn't take into account these other intersections, these other representations of identity. So we need to come up with assessments that better look at this intersectional representation so we can see what is missing, what is being misrepresented, or what is actually there. So we need better assessments. The second thing is that minorities are not seeing themselves in the media. And that's an issue for those individuals specifically that are children or young adults when they're still trying to construct their identity. It's just not present. So we need to go further. We need intersectional, diverse representation. And I don't want to come up here and say that we're still kind of static, because we have been moving in a very positive way. There are a couple of examples out there of some films that are doing really, really great in terms of diversity. However, this diversity has been very monolithic and one-sided. We still highlight just one issue of diversity and not intersectionality so much. So let's take Coco, for example. Does really great in terms of diversity for representation of race and ethnicity, but the main character is still a cisgender male. Call Me by Your Name. Great in terms of sexual orientation, but again, the character is still white, cisgender males. Black Panther goes a little bit further. We look at issues of race, ethnicity, nationalism, and gender. And Moonlight goes even further than that. Moonlight tackles race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic class, and also issues of geography and other things. So these examples right here show that diversity can be done in Hollywood. And not only can it be done, it is also lucrative because these are all blockbuster hits that have generated tons and tons of revenue. Yet Hollywood remains slow to kind of catch up with it. So we need to look at these examples. We need to critique them. We need to see what they've done well, what can they do better, and we need to build upon them. There are a lot of intersections that we can talk about, but I want to talk about an intersection that is near and dear to me in particular because it's how I identify. And the term is called Latinx, and maybe you've heard it said a couple of times. Latinx is a gender-neutral ethnic marker that goes beyond the masculine and feminine identifiers. It puts gender on a spectrum or a continuum rather than this traditional binary that we think of. According to Rekart, Latinx is used by these individuals of Latin American descent whose gender identity fluctuates along this continuum. They're agender, they're gender non-conforming, they're gender queer, or gender fluid. Latinx has also gotten some attention here recently in the Netflix original series One Day at a Time. One of the main characters, Elena Alvarez, identifies as Latinx, and she educates her family and her friends about this concept, and in the process, she educates the audience. Netflix, as you know, is this digital media streaming service, and it's on these digital spaces that the term Latinx was created, shaped, and is still maintained today. It rose to popularity around 2014 on social media, and then we saw it start to spill over into these physical, ethnic, and queer spaces. By 2015, Latinx was being incorporated into the names of collegiate organizations at Pomona College, Columbia University, and the University of Maryland, to name a few. It was used as resistance and inclusiveness. And in 2016, we saw it used specifically as political intervention in the 2016 presidential election. Individuals who are progressive and inclusive and intersectional used digital media to create this rhetorical movement that had real life, pragmatic, physical implications. It's brilliant and it's beautiful and it's brave. And although few examples exist right now, but they're still growing, there are a couple of examples that I can show you of how Latinx is being incorporated with digital media. Web series have been starting to pop up here and there on digital media, produced and created and written by Latinx individuals with Latinx content. Take the show Brujos, for example. Brujos, the characters on there identify as gay, Latinx witches that are in grad school. There's a lot of intersections there. It's a really good show. You should check it out. We also have other great Latinx content on Gentefied, The Pineapple Diaries, Brown Girls, and the most recent addition is a show called Quiero. It's a talk show web series with a Latinx host, and she goes around and talks to other Latinx individuals from all around the country. On these digital spaces, we also find podcasts like Café con Chisme with self-proclaimed Latinx hosts. These individuals talk about issues of gender and race and sexuality, also things that deal with culture specifically. Other popular Latinx podcasts are Bitter Brown Femmes, Tamarindo, and also Locutora Radio, and hopefully soon my podcast that I'm producing right now. We also see digital channels like Me Too and Pero Like. And these two are very visual, and they have hosts that are intersectional and Latinx, and they have a range of topics as well that deal with politics and pop culture and culture. Their audience is also intercultural, so it's not just limited to Latinx. The audience for these two are all over the world. Me Too specifically has an app that you can download to your tablet or to your smartphone, and you can send Latinx images through text messages back and forth to one another. These examples highlight the nuanced and intersectional diversity that is often misrepresented or altogether forgotten in mainstream television and media. These individuals here are paving the way with digital media to create more inclusive and more intersectional types of representation. Who will be next to disrupt this pattern? The answer is you, ustedes, tú. You have the power to create digital media, to create representations for any cultural group, not just Latinx. You literally have the power in your hands. That cell phone that you have right there, you can use it to take pictures, to take audio, to take video, to tell your story and send it out to the world. People just like you at San Diego State University are creating and critiquing different types of media, from the School of Media and Journalism to over here to the area of excellence, digital humanities and global diversity. Students just like you are changing the narrative and starting to create content that better reflects how they see themselves. You plus digital media equals increased representation, better representation. It's an embodiment of self and culture, of identity and diversity and also pride. But most importantly, It directly challenges and disrupts the social, constructed, normative issues that we have seen plaguing issues of media forever. You have the power to change that narrative. So grab a cell phone, grab a tablet, grab your friend, and create, disrupt, resist, and represent. Thank you.